Nitish. Good to see you.
Good seeing you as well, Nasri.
Thank you for being at this interview. Nitish Sairam is the CEO of Illumine Industries, a fast-growing startup in the field of design engineering for many climate action verticals, solar power, electric vehicles, green buildings being some of the prominent among them. Thank you, Nitish. I'm going to have a brief conversation with him and on a very interesting topic on how Illumine started from where it did 8 years back to where it is today. And it's quite a fascinating story. Thank you once again, Nitish. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely pleasure.
So rather than start from the very beginning, I'm going to actually fast forward a bit, or rather go to a slightly different level to start off and ask you, while surely there would have been a pain point that you guys were addressing when you started, and today I'm sure you have many other areas where you're adding benefits, specific benefits, tangible benefits. Being in the field of climate, being in the field of sustainability, is there a larger purpose that you guys are driving towards? What is the purpose that drives your company beyond just business?
Absolutely. Today we do have absolute clarity on why we exist as a business. There are about 4 million people who die every year just because of the lack of clean air, water and soil. And different companies contribute to this problem solving by providing sustainable solutions in different forms and fashions, and governments contribute by bringing in policies, VCs contribute by bringing in funds, and we were trying to understand what our expertise was, and understanding that we are engineers at our core, we tried to solve for this problem by bringing in our expertise, which is engineering itself, and that's what we do today. And there are different ways you can go about bringing in your expertise. One, working with end consumers, and thinking about it, that wasn't as viable for us for different reasons. So that's the reason we decided to find ways to empower builders, and they in turn work with end consumers to provide sustainable solutions. And that's what we do as a company today. But perceptions would be that, you know, every company is absolutely clear about what they do right from the get-go, and that's not the case.
So let me then ask you the question I had in mind from a more tangible viewpoint. In the first year, how did you guys start off? What were your experiences? What were the positives that you had, the challenges that you had, and the learnings from the first year? As you said, when you start off, oh well, as they say, when you look back and write the story, it's very different. When you start off, normally it's very different. So how was your first year?
The first year was just trying to sustain as a company, trying to exist and pay bills. And honestly, I think that's the case for most companies. Only I think 3 years into the business did we even, you know, we had to do a lot of soul searching to understand our why, but that was absolutely essential, because once you have created a base, you still need to find that purpose which excites you to come to work, and do the same for your team as well. But again, going back to the first year, it was 3-4 people together in
So you guys started
garage.
in a small room or something like that?
Yeah, it was my dad's friend's garage, like 3-4 houses down from where the street where we lived.
I think I've seen that house.
You have? Okay.
Well, I think I have. It's a bit more than a garage. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, the person who lived there ended up selling the car. We had some space. We brought in a couple of tables, chairs, and got things going. But and like I said, any first year for any company. All we were trying to do was exist and pay our bills.
But what were the key learnings? You see, the first year is very challenging. Most times
Absolutely.
we have to think about multiple things besides business. It's a pure existential problem. But have there been key learnings from the first year or the first couple of years that you think you can tell to others, many others who are going to be starting like you?
Definitely. I think you have multiple things that you need to figure out, right from fundamental processes. You'll need basic administrative help. You'll need legal, financial advices, and the common thread or the common lining between all of these are identifying the right people that can come on board, because until then, everything that you have is just a figment of your imagination. And
but how do you do
else.
all these? Sorry to interrupt. How do you do all these when you're in the first year, you are just struggling to pay your bills, getting legal help or systems or getting good guys on board? These cost money. These need bandwidth. Were you guys able to achieve some of these in your first couple of years in some way or the other?
For me, at least, I think it was bringing the right people in would solve all of these. And that's where I went about building a team. Within the first 3 to 6 months, I understood I needed teams to help me with all of these. And all the partners in the company today came in within the first year. And like I said,
so you focused on the one thing that could take care of the rest.
Exactly.
That's a very good idea. That's a very powerful idea for many others.
Yeah.
Let me move on to your first customer.
Please.
So you guys started, you bootstrapped, you found father's friend's garage, you started off, okay, you somehow got a couple of good guys together. Getting the first customer, what was the process like? How did you guys start up? Did you try with Indian customers? Did you straight away try with the American customers? How did this happen?
So all of us, me and my partners, were based out of the US. So the obvious choice was to go behind a domain or a geography where we had expertise. So we did go behind the US customers. And I think perseverance pays off more than anything else, because you don't have credibility the first year, you don't have a name to go about. All you can hope for is one person who's willing to give you the chance. And millions of businesses have existed before us, millions are going to exist after us, and I think everybody have found a way to convince their first customer. And it's not rocket science. I think it's just being perseverant to get somebody on board who believes in what you do.
But how did it happen? Do you recall any specific shall we say breakthrough that led to the first customer? Any specific piece of luck or anything else that happened that led to the first customer, or did it happen because you guys kept slogging?
A combination of both. We kept up the grunt work day in and day out, but then I remember the first major customer was the weekend after the current CEO Sudarshan, he came on board. So we ended up having conversations with the customer. They had a bunch of projects, and there was nobody else to take up that and support them. So we said yes. We had nothing in place yet, which would be surprising. You would think everybody have things figured out before they go behind their first customer, but that's not always the case. We took those bunch of projects up, figured it out as we went through, and all we had to do was deliver on our promises, and that has a snowball effect to take us forward.
So and then you grew and grew and grew. That's the story I hear.
Yeah.
And today you have a few hundred customers. That's solar EPCs in the United States alone. That's very impressive. How have your offerings grown? So you started off with something, the customer wanted something, the first customer wanted something, you started it off, that's fine. Sudarshan joined, so that made things easy for you. But then on, until today, how have your offerings grown?
So
evolved?
Absolutely. How the offerings have evolved from that fundamental purpose of empowering builders. And I think once you understand your purpose, you try to solve for it more and more. And back then, all we were trying to do was provide production guarantees as an expertise. That's how we started off. But as we went through, we saw a gap in providing design as a service. We saw a gap in providing engineering as a service, and those came by as years went through. But today, as a company, what we're trying to do and where we're trying to head as time progresses is focus on providing cloud-based solutions. The second is providing a one-point problem-solving system, and the third is expanding these across different geographies. So this is where we are heading as a company, and I think it's more exciting than it has ever been because it's new for us. There aren't a lot of companies that have done what we're aspiring to do, and I think that's the fun of it all.
And what I also understand is that starting off with solar photovoltaic, you guys have also branched off now to other climate verticals, the most prominent of course being green buildings and electric vehicles, EV charging. That's what I understand. So these are two large verticals in themselves. In fact, green buildings could even be larger than solar photovoltaic itself, and electric vehicles could be even larger. So I think you have been able to grow not just within solar, but you have been able to also grow beyond solar to other verticals, from what I understand.
Absolutely. Again, the fundamental to empower builders goes across different verticals, and in the building space itself, there is a huge need for the expertise. And surprisingly, even though we were new to the market, we were able to rely on our past set of experiences from solar, from batteries, and we picked up a couple of huge projects like the expansions of the Williams and Hobby airports. We did the Panthers Stadium, we did the Houston Metro projects.
Wow.
So I think, again, that also comes down to having a really good team to support, in those expansions, because these expansion ideas actually came up from the team itself. So once you're clear in terms of what the organization is here to do, I think there'll be enough and more hands who are looking to support you do that.
Yeah, I guess they do. That's how it goes. Yeah. Now I'm going to shift to a slightly different thing, and this is going to be probably 2 or 3 questions around this, because I think this is a very interesting aspect of your growth, your company's growth, and which is you have been completely bootstrapped, right from the day you started until now. You haven't got a single rupee or a single dollar of external venture capital, angel, seed funding so far. Now, that may not be very strange or surprising, given that you are not a completely product firm. You are more of a service offering, even though a very high value added service. As a result, it's not entirely surprising. But remember, you guys were growing at a time when venture capital in India was exploding. So there would have been times, in spite of the fact that you guys were able to grow on your own, there would have been times for sure when VCs knocked on your door and said, hello, do you want my money? Were there such times? Were there such temptations? And how did you overcome these?
So I think it goes from personal experience, at least for me. The second company that I worked at ended up filing for bankruptcy because an investor decided to pull out. And that hits you hard because you're young, you're about 23, 24, and you see this happening. It's a lesson that I think I never forgot. And because of that, I was clear not to take VC funds to sustain a company. To scale a company is different for services firms, because once you have the foundations, then additional funds would help you grow quicker, and change in macroeconomic situations for investors is not going to put a strain on your business, because you have your fundamentals in place, and additional funds is just for you to scale and grow quicker. So because of, again, I don't think it was all intentional. Experiences in life teach you a few things, and this was, I think, one of those.
But did you have rather instances where external investors knocked on your doors? You surely would have.
We did.
And how did you say no to them? Was it more like, you know what, we are self-sufficient, thank you very much? Or did you have a dialogue with them and then convince them that, you know, we don't need you right now?
I think it was a combination of both, based on the kind of institutions that reached out, and at least that was the scenario until last year, because we didn't need it, like I said, and we were clear that until we were at a certain point, we were not going to go look for the funds or take the funds on. So I think we have been pretty direct, and we have known to be pretty direct as founders and as a company itself. So I don't think it was that difficult a conversation for us.
But do you expect this trend to continue? If you were to grow to much larger levels, to levels that are, let's say, 100 times what you are right now, and if that become your aspirations, will you still reject external funding, or would you say, let me think about it in future?
For me, if the company can sustain with its own revenue, then for us to scale quicker into other markets, there is no harm in us accepting an offer. We are in conversations with a few, but I think it's for us to decide how we want to go about it as we progress.
So you're not saying no right now?
Where we are today, we're self-sustaining, so maybe not.
That's a very politically correct answer. However, let me ask another question. You see, I do appreciate getting external investors naturally gets external elements, external pressures, and some of these you may or may not like, agreed. At the same time, external investors have also benefited tremendously some companies, not just because of the money, but the fact that you get brains that you otherwise would not have got to help you out. Don't you think you are missing that by not accepting external investors?
We haven't missed out on that so far, at least for the first 7.5 years, because to a large extent, we have been growing 100% year over year, and that was without external support. But again, that doesn't mean the future should be any different. It can, and like I said, we haven't missed out anything in the past. The future might be a very different story for us.
But at the same time, you may not know what you missed.
Fair point.
All right, last question to you on this part. What would your suggestions be? You see, interestingly, we are sitting and discussing this at a time when we are also seeing a lot of these unicorns, soonicorns, whatever cons also coming to a watershed moment when it is no longer as rosy as they thought, right? Startups are imploding, all kinds of challenges for VCs. So many startups who are just about starting, early stage startups, the founders might be thinking, look, maybe I should not take external funding. Maybe I should grow on my own. For those guys who are very keen to bootstrap themselves and grow on their own, what would your suggestions be based on what you guys have gone through? If it were to be only 2 or 3 pieces of suggestions that they ask you, what would they be?
I think before I answer the question of how should you go about bootstrapping, I'll probably answer the bigger question as to how I look at funding, because it's different for different companies, and it depends on, I believe, 2 major factors. One, the industry or the domain that you operate in. 2, the business model itself. But the business model also is reliant on how comfortable you are with how quickly